All right, guys. Episode 5, Cutler Cast. I just asked Matt when we started this, what episode is this? Because we've been moving along so fast, faster than I thought.
Are you like getting old and forgetting, or are you
no?
Just so
I just,
busy
you know what? It's going to get to that point where it's like, okay, episode after episode. The problem is I shoot so much content, and today I did a video today. I did one yesterday. I did one Saturday. I think I did one even Friday. So for me, I've been shooting the last few days, so I'm kind of lost in what I'm. Let me put Capone down here because he's getting fidgety. I lost track of like what I actually have to do, and you know, for me, like between JTV now the Cutler Cast, you know, we've had great success, and the feedback's been phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I didn't think we get as many comments as we have, but every single one, there's just a ton of comments. People are asking their questions. They're giving their feedback. Some people want to see guests. Some people want it to stay the way it is. You know, a lot of people have never seen this side of you, the side that I know and people close to you know.
Well, it's kind of funny because right now we've, you know, normally we're on tour, right? We have expo after expo or events, but we've been sidelined. So this is kind of a good thing. I was talking to Izzo in Germany this morning, and he really is enjoying the podcast, and the feedback's been phenomenal to our German fans because, as you know, we were scheduled to go over and over to Germany, and we haven't had the opportunity. And people look forward to that FaceTime, right? So for us, you know, for being able to have this as kind of an inside track of what our thoughts are, what our lifestyle is, you know, they can see stuff on social media, but when you get into the nuts and bolts of what we do or how we think, that's really what people want to know about. Because listen, man, you build a base of people that follow you for certain reasons, and I think, you know, we take for granted sometimes the ability to live in the space that we are. And, you know, fitness obviously is our lifestyle, but there's so much more that goes on other than fitness.
And also just Instagram 9 times out of 10 is just a still image. You write a quote or you write something, or it's a product placement, and they don't get to hear like your just thoughts just flow. And, you know, if you're doing JTV, that's, you know, it's based around bodybuilding. Yeah. So this is just a total different side that the average fan has never got to see in you.
Yeah. And with social media, like that's why I've taken social media, and it's a positive thing for me. And I get this question a lot where, what do you think about social media? And I was a kid, you know, at Gold's Gym picking up magazines, and you know as well as I, because you followed the books, we would try to make those pictures come alive and tell a story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, you had to use imagination to do that. So when I read a book by Bob Paris or a magazine article, you know, he talked about doing chest, and it's not like today where you can click on YouTube or see actual training DVDs from the past of certain champions, including myself, and learn and watch the motion and watch like exactly how the elbows move, or like how, you know, the dumbbells, how far apart they are, or, you know, the speed of the repetitions, right? And that's what's so important. So I think that explanation of certain things, and now with live, even though I know some people listen to this on audio and not visually, because I know we talked about this, like when we were shooting to do this podcast, we call it a podcast, but I don't know it's Cutler Cast. We talked about how people would be working around the house listening to this and not watching us sit across from each other or look at guests that we will have in the future. And they'll kind of like, you know, put it in perspective to how they take in the information. And I think that's what's really, really cool about being able to do this now during COVID. And since we don't have the ability to travel, I just read something this morning about, you know, EU now locking down again, meaning like U.S. can't travel there.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, is it ever going to end, you know?
I hope so. You know, this weekend I actually had someone come up to me, and I was in...
Where was this? Yeah.
I was in Colorado. I went up to the Brian Shaw Classic in Estes Park, Colorado, which is a beautiful town. It's in, you know, it's in the middle of the mountains. And a gentleman came up to me and said, "Hey, are you manager Matt?"
Yeah.
And I was like, Like, how is anyone noticing me in here? Because I'm just kind of, sticking myself. Yeah. And he talked about, man, I listened to the Cutler cast. He listens to it on Spotify. He doesn't watch it on YouTube. And he was talking about how much he enjoyed the podcast. So that was the first time I had someone come up to me that I did not expect it there at a strongman event in Colorado, came up to me. We took a picture together, and he talked about how much he enjoyed the podcast. So that's a good feeling to know that it's reaching random places.
But we knew this. But the thing that's so crazy about, if you look back and watch, like, even my DVDs, which, you probably witnessed, you knew me pretty early on, but dude, I didn't say anything.
No,
I didn't speak. So like now when I speak, people are like, damn, I didn't know that about Jay, or, obviously they've read articles, but there's not a lot of talking, right, that people have content of, other than, even on my DVDs, it was just very.
What year's the last DVD you did?
I did one for 2009, around 2009 for the, it was called Undisputed.
Have you thought about doing another one?
Yeah, DVDs just don't work, bro.
Not a DVD. I'm just saying like a
documentary. Yeah, it would be great.
I think.
But you know what? My documentary would have to be. It would have to be very complex. What I would like to go back is to high school, because my past tells a crazy story. And, I have pictures flexing my muscles when I was 7 years old. And I was like bigger than every teenager there was, like, especially in the area where I grew up. And I was, I started working out with weights slightly in high school when I was a freshman. But I used to have, my brothers had a weight set, the concrete weights, those plastic weights. And they had the bench press with the rack was very, so if you unloaded the weight, the thing tipped over, right? It
was real thin right around your back.
Yeah, so I used to go, and I remember bench pressing 70 pounds, and I didn't lift weights. But when I started, high school in, at Wachusett Regional High School, I was able to start weight training somewhat. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know about repetitions and all that, but I always excelled more than everybody else. I was stronger. Then I mentioned in high school, I used to go on these competitions for football, and we do a deadlift, a bench press, and a squat. Mm-hmm. And I always was the strongest in those 1 rep maxes. And I didn't lift weights. That was when I was like a junior in high school. We traveled to the regional high schools. So my crazy past, it would be cool to go back and interview like a lot of my childhood people and say, what did you expect?
Yeah.
And what did you see, and how would you see the progression? What was the mindset? Because I think the mindset is more important to everyone, because it makes people like think, okay, what is my mindset like? Do I have the ability to go beyond what expectations are? And that's the thing is, I'm not going to sit here and be one of these people that tell you, I knew from day one I was going to be the greatest bodybuilder on the planet. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was kind of unplanned, right?
Yeah.
So for me, to move, up like I did, and all the ups and downs, it always wasn't a huge success for me, as you know. Of course not. I mean, the beginning it was very successful, but once I got to the pros, it was like, okay, take a back seat. And, Olympia stage is the biggest stage for us. And I had huge expectations going into that. And, of course, I got kind of pushed back a little bit just because of my age, I think, and maturity. Yeah. And then here we are, with all the medals and everything else. And I finally achieved the great status. And now I look at, the younger generation. I say, okay, who's going to be the next? Who's going to be the next Jay Cutler, right? Mm-hmm. And we can talk about, like, the secrets. And, people always ask me that, like, what was the secret?
You know how many people, after we mentioned that in the last podcast, there's probably
remind
50 comments.
Remind me what it said.
You were just saying, I'm going to talk about bodybuilding secrets next time around.
So,
but you didn't say what it was. So there is just comment after comment. Matt, tell us a secret. What's the secret? We want to know the secret. Why did Jay do that to us? Why'd you leave us hanging until next week? So you have secrets in bodybuilding.
I don't know if they're secrets. It's just
or maybe things that were secret to you that you didn't tell other people.
I'm gonna tell you like a couple crazy things. Okay, I'm gonna talk about saunas.
Okay.
So when I was training for like 2001 Olympia, which people on paper think that's probably my best look ever, right? I competed about
I think that was like
260.
your best condition. Like
Yeah,
the abs were
but
sunken,
the
and
balance.
separation and,
So
yeah.
I didn't do any cardio getting ready for that show.
Zero cardio.
I did no cardio.
How is that possible?
Well, it's everything against textbook. What I did do, though, I was training twice a day.
Okay.
So I would hit the metabolism twice. Instead of doing the cardio sessions, Chris Aceto, who was my trainer at the time, was like, listen, you're going to get more benefit out of training with weights twice a day. So I chose a workout routine that allowed me to have 2 body parts a day that I train. So, like, for example, I would do chest in the morning and triceps at night.
How much of a break would be in between?
5 hours.
5 hours.
Joe Weider told me that. Joe Weider actually told me that you need 5 hours. So I followed a Weider principle of that. I swear that's exactly, he told me you need 5 hours. So at the time I was training at like 7:30 in the morning, I would go back at like 2 or 3 o'clock and I would train. And each time after the workout, I would sit in the sauna for like 20 minutes. And it would be blazing. I don't even know what the heat was at, but it was ridiculously hot. I literally had to get out a few times during the time I was in the sauna.
And this is twice a day after every training session.
Okay. And I truly believe that worked well to speed up the metabolism. I think that saunas help that. I think the sweat factor, pushing water out. Of course, you need to stay super hydrated, but that was one of the things. And then, of course, I'd leave there.
Wait, one quick question. Did you ever talk to any other bodybuilders? Has anyone else ever done that too successfully?
I don't.
Or is this the first time you're really talking about it?
I never really. Of course, I spoke about saunas, but it's just like deep tissue massage. I felt that was a benefit because deep tissue not only flushes the muscle, stretches the muscle, keeps the muscle pliable. So obviously, blood flow goes more through the muscle, but it also helps move around blood in certain areas that you might accumulate stubborn body fat. So, like, for example, when my guy would rub down the back of my hamstrings and, the gluteus and those places, lower back, I believe truly that those areas, they got, moving around that tissue and causing the blood flow and causing the circulation. That helped, just like the saunas, causing the blood flow. Your blood flow is going to be more sweat. So if you had areas where you held more water, it would be flushed out. So I felt that on a daily basis, flushing that water really helped. But also I would go to the tanning booth. I would lay in the high pressure beds and I would use like preparation H or whatever on my like stubborn, like on my glutes or whatever else.
And that's supposed to pull water.
It's supposed to pull water, but
Cute.
another thing, like that's another thing where it's like continuous pulling on a daily basis. I felt that you wouldn't get as much sticking. You know what I'm saying? So
I remember years ago, guys would always use preparation H, and you don't hear anyone doing that anymore, like on their lower abs and stuff to help pull that last bit of water. But I haven't heard anyone do that in a long time.
Yeah, no one really talks about that. I mean, I told you, even when I came back in 2013 and was, trying to win the title from Phil, I wrapped myself in saran wrap before I did my cardio, and I wore a weight belt. You can see that in the Living Large Trainer. Does it work? I think the heat, trapping that, and really, I would take that saran wrap, I would wrap it around all the way from my hips all the way up, and it would allow me to sweat like crazy. When I took that saran wrap off, the water would just pour out. So those are kind of like things that I did, and I don't know if those are secrets. It's more effort, if that makes sense. But people would say, well, Jay, why didn't you just do cardio? Listen, I wanted to maintain as much muscle, and we know, I don't care what anyone says, cardio and weight training are two different animals, right? And if you're trying to maintain a rounder, fuller muscle, the cardio is very hard it's going to deplete that muscle. Yeah. And anyone that says, well, my legs get bigger by doing stairs. Listen, if you didn't have to do the stairs and you were able to, train twice a day and actually work the muscle, because the muscle, you're going to burn way more calories trying to maintain a pump in the gym, weight training, than you ever could do doing cardio. And that's a fact. Okay. So for your body to maintain that pump, you're going to burn more calories. So, I think that if you're able to do less cardio and condition yourself to a certain point, that's more beneficial. And these are kind of like just secret things that I just never really shared that I did to have that extra effort into attaining the best look. Now, people can question, oh, you weren't always the most conditioned guy. But you know what? It's all illusionary, because if you have a certain amount of muscle mass, I was talking to this woman at the gym. I was training at Lift Factory on Sunday, and she was talking about, my hamstrings are really coming in. And I said, well, listen, you're getting more dense muscle there. And it doesn't matter how much you diet or try to strip your body fat down. If you don't have the muscle to push
against the skin, yeah,
you won't have that definition. As you know, I was never the leanest guy on the stage, but I had enough condition where I appeared to have, a leaner look than the guy that might have had lower body fat.
Yeah.
I calipered 3% body fat at 280 or something. That's the most I've got down to. I don't think I've ever measured myself under 3%, but that was 3% in calipers. And it's questionable if those are
they're accurate or not.
Yeah, what's accurate?
I think the
water test.
Yeah, where they put you in water and weigh you, and they can tell.
I never did a water test. Have you?
No. But
because it was never like when you're standing on stage, the judges are never going to ask you what % body fat are you.
No.
How much did you squat getting ready for the show? How many calories did you eat? Did you do cardio?
It all depends on the illusion you create.
Yeah, and you've heard this. I mean, Nathan D'Asher doesn't do any cardio.
No. I remember Dexter talking about that. That was part of the reason why he thought his career went so long, because cardio is wear and tear in the body. And if you're not putting your body through that wear and tear, that atrophy, you can go a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, 2001, man, I just did some crazy things. I mean, we talk about, I mentioned to you like this candy corn Boston baked beans thing.
I remember you used to always talk about the candy corn.
Yeah, so Chris Aceto, who did my nutrition, for many years, the way he used to prepare my diets, I hate to say prepare, but he used to guide me. And he would say, listen, you're going to eat this many carbohydrates and this much protein. And I don't care what it's from as long as it doesn't have a lot of fat, right? So after training, like, as you know, when you're a huge body weight, like I was 280s, sometimes 290, even getting ready for a competition, I was trying to get in a lot of calories. So we'd have high, low, and medium carb days. So basically, I'd have like a 3-day cycle where, I would, eat a certain amount. When on my low carb days, I would have high protein. And then my medium days, the protein and the carbs were kind of like even. And then on my high carb day, the protein would go way down and the carbohydrates would go way up. I'd still have the same calorie count, but it would be from way different sources. For example, if I was eating 400 grams of protein a day on a low carb day, right? And I was eating, say, 200 grams of carbohydrates, I would actually on the high day, drop that protein to like 150 or 175, and I would take the carbohydrates to like 800 to 1,000. As you know, 4 calories per gram of protein versus carbohydrates, right? It's the same as fat has 9 calories per gram. So I would keep the fats to a minimum, and then I would just try to take in as much carbs as possible. And a lot of those would be around the training. So, he used to be like, drink something with sugar, or, whether I drank Gatorade, or I used to drink Coca-Cola. I'm not going to lie. Like 2001 Olympia, I won basically that contest. I got second, but I probably could have won. Drinking Coca-Cola after I trained.
Every day.
And I had candy corn. Candy corn after training for the calories, just to reach
like
the
how
carbohydrates.
Many would you eat?
Well, I would measure out whatever the label said. If it was like 10 candy corn was 50 carbs or whatever, that's what I would eat. So I would be able to get in 300 grams of carbohydrates right after the training, because that's what I think what I was shooting for. If I was eating 1,000 grams that day, I would have like half in sugar and then the rest in like rice. And I would put honey on the rice. It was crazy. I was having asparagus in my rice and I was putting honey on top, and I would mix it all together and just eat it.
This is wild dieting, not off.
Yeah, this was dieting. Yeah, this was dieting.
That almost goes against what almost
textbook,
every coach got to remove sugars, got to remove sweeteners, got to remove everything. Just plain Jane.
Every prep was different.
Did you ever do that again later on? Because I don't want to say it almost sounds reckless.
Yeah,
because that goes against every.
I can't say that I did that, but I graduated to having like sushi, because as you know, but a lot of the viewers don't know. Like you go out for sushi and we get some rolls, right? Even if we're eating spicy tuna or like whatever tuna, like whatever on rice, that rice is loaded with sugar.
Yeah, because they put sugar in it
Yes,
to make it
sticky. So that's why, guys, you have sticky rice when you go to the sushi places. And I watched, I didn't know this until I watched my friend at his restaurant. Matt used to run Katsuya. He said, do you know how much sugar we put in our rice? It would be a huge thing of rice. And I said, how much? He's like, you wouldn't believe it. And it was like a huge bag.
So everyone's thinking they're eating rolls and they don't realize they're pounding all this
like
sugar.
You're getting all that sugar. So when people are like, oh, I didn't cheat that bad, and they say I'm not supposed to eat sugar. There you go. So those people that, cheat on sushi, it was just like me eating the candy corn. So I kind of graduated to a less exposed carbohydrate source.
You went to sushi instead of just eating Halloween
because
candy.
it was, but Boston baked beans had a little more fat, so that's why I did some, but they have a peanut inside. It's like a hard shell. Our guy's probably like, what the hell?
You know what I'm thinking of all the candy in the world you could eat. Candy corn is disgusting. What the hell would you eat candy corn for?
I don't know.
It's
liked it, man.
That's the stuff that you leave in the bottom of the like on Halloween. You get all this candy and there's candy corn in the bottom. You're like, I don't want this.
You know what? Back then we didn't have like sour strips and like sour
like a
gummy
Snickers
worms.
bar?
I don't
Why
even
not
know.
like a
Well,
Kit
because
Kat?
they have a lot more fat, bro.
Yeah.
They have nuts and all that stuff. So I was trying to, I stay away from. That's why I mentioned the Boston baked beans. I realized they have peanuts in it, but on the days when I would take in a little less calories, on the high carb days, that's when I would go to Boston baked beans to get the fat in there too and help slow my metabolism a little bit. But so I would, I graduated to the sushi thing and I'd have these epic sushi meals like at a buffet, like all you can eat buffets. That's when they first started all you can eat sushi. Like back, now it's everywhere. But back then you had to find special.
If you go to a
places.
sushi restaurant in Vegas and they're not all you can eat, you almost kind of look at them like,
well, you know what? It's funny when you mentioned, oh, I only eat at all you can eat sushi. I'm like, man, those ones usually aren't as good. But everyone's kind of gone into all you can eat sushi now.
Yeah.
And there are good and bad sushi places, but you and I discuss this all the time. We hate going out to eat anywhere but sushi.
Yeah.
And why is that?
I
know my reason.
I like sushi, but I like the all you can eat. I like being able to go just have a little bit of everything and not just one thing.
I know, but you could do that at a Vegas buffet. So what's the difference?
Because sushi's just sushi. And I just love sushi.
You know why? I'll tell you why. Another secret.
The sugar?
No, because I can't make sushi at home.
No.
I mean, I probably could learn, but it's one thing. Like you can make burgers, you can have pizza, you can like anything you can have at a Vegas buffet, you can pretty much make, right?
I got an idea for a new video for you. Jay Cutler makes sushi at home.
Yeah, that's probably a good video. That would probably be.
It's either going to be great or it's going to be no, not hire a sushi chef. You got to do it.
I probably could learn, but that's something that like it's just so easy to go out and eat out. No, so. It's one of those things. That's probably why I chose to do that, and then because we don't there's no real thing that we crave, right? It's we talk about this a lot, especially as you get a little older. You don't have those you listen to these people that are competing and like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to eat this, I can't wait to eat that. You deal with that all the time because you work with a lot of athletes, and I don't crave anything. And I didn't crave a lot when I was training because I was a high carb dieter, right? So I was never really depleted. Like my low carb days, like I mentioned, listen, I died on 50 carbs before, but when I was at my peak, I think my lowest was 400 grams of carbs a day.
And that's as high as some of the high guys are now.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has something to do with some of the physiques now. I was just talking about this today with someone. I remember watching Ronnie Coleman dieting on French fries and barbecue sauce. Like, how is that possible?
It's just genetics. He'd eat out every meal. I mean, eat all McDonald's in the off season, and still when you have that much muscle, I mean, it just
think of the two of you. The two of you are both the larger guys on the stage, and you're eating upwards of 1,000 grams of carbs a day. Ronnie's eating piles upon piles of French fries with every meal, and that got you guys in shape. And nowadays, some of these guys will drop their carbs to 50.
Yeah, I think, listen, I'm not going to say this, and this has been a topic lately on how hard the guys trained versus today, right? What I can say is this, and I witnessed this weekend. Gyms are more well equipped with machines, rather than free weights. And remember, I started at a time where there was no hammer strength or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I watched the transition of machines now come in. So we talk about the great gyms in Vegas and the machines they have. We don't talk about, hey, they have this brand dumbbell or these kind of like thicker barbells or because I prefer, remember the thinner barbells, now they're thicker, right?
Yeah.
But we talk about the machines because obviously, with shoulder problems or, elbows or knees, you want something that's smooth. So like we have Powerhouse, who has some of the best equipment I've seen in Las Vegas right now. And, I work out at Kilo and they have Techno Gym, which I feel is a lot smoother than some of the hammer strength. Right. So we've seen that transition. I think that's what we're seeing a lot. People are working on machines, and not to say it's bad. You can still build a great physique, but the meat and potato movements, they're very few and far between. Who I can say that I follow on social media that I'm impressed with the training, the hardcore training, is Ian and Chris Bumstead.
Yeah.
They're building muscle with heavy weights.
Yep. So earlier today, I was with Milos, and he trained a girl that I'm working with. And we touched on that a little bit. And I said, the guys nowadays just don't grab the heavy dumbbells.
There are, but no, there's some that do.
Yeah, some.
But
I'm
there's a
majority.
variety that say, oh, I'd rather work on this machine, or we didn't have that, right? So to build the density, do you have to squat or deadlift or bench press? I think at some point you do. I mean, that's just my opinion.
To build that dense muscle and I'll use Ronnie as an example, or Branch Warren, or Johnny Jackson, they lifted heavy free weights. Then I'm not saying, of course, there are guys that do it now and their physiques show it. But yeah, you're right. A lot of the people now tailor their training around machines. And
remember Mike Francois? Remember the density of Mike Francois? And I mean, they all had kind of powerlifting backgrounds, and that's what I'm noticing.
You know who else has a lot of density? Look at Hadi Chupan. You ever watched him train?
Yeah.
Same thing. It's free weights. It's not very, very little machinery. But I can also understand if you're a top guy training with free weights, you have the risk to reward ratio is a lot. It's a lot higher than it is versus using a machine that's a little safer. So you got contracts to think about, and some of these guys might say, I don't want to risk that.
Yeah, you're right. But you know what? The hammer strength actually was brought about, and I remember this when it transitioned into bodybuilding. It was actually made for sports teams. Okay, so Life Fitness ended up purchasing hammer strength, but I remember it was made for more strength and conditioning for football players and baseball, basketball, that kind of stuff, to alleviate the dangers of the free weights, right?
Because you can't do it's
hard to hurt yourself, right?
Because it forces you to move it correctly.
Yes. So it does the motion. That's what's unique about hammer strength. It actually, so if you're supposed to go at a certain degrees at a bench press, for example, that it does the movement basically, and you have a variation of grip, so you can do lower, higher, and it works isolateral, so you have that weaker side. You're not restrictive like a barbell. Yeah. And that's why that equipment was made. And that's basically, it's kind of like a buffer for the real thing. And that's, kind of where we at. But
you're not getting that when you're using a dumbbell. You got to stabilize that, and that's still working the muscle different just to stabilize it. But you can usually look at a physique, I think, and you can look at someone and go, that person's lifted a lot of heavy weight.
Yeah, and listen, we still stick to a lot. When we train, like, we still use a lot of weight, like free weight movements, and I think that's...
We always do at least half of its free weight movement, and then some machines.
I've kept a lot of density, but, I pivot back now a little bit to mainstream sports. Like, I look at characters that kind of inspired me early on, and I know I mentioned to you, early on, Bruce Jenner, right? Who was unbelievable. I just read it. I just watched a documentary the other day on him, and Lance Armstrong were some of the biggest inspirations to me. And what's funny is, I'll touch on Bruce Jenner, but Lance Armstrong, kind of like, as I started my journey, he won 7 Tour de France. Yeah. In the years where I kind of was like coming up,
Yeah.
Right. So 99, I think, was his first, and he, I think his last one was 2005, right?
Yeah.
7 years. And during that time, like, I won the Olympia the next year, but I was second, you know, that was pretty much my climb. And I remember reading his book, It's Not About the Bike or whatever. I think that's what it was called. And it really inspired me to, you know, become better mentally. And I loved the tenacity and like his focus. Okay. Of course, later, you know, all this negative stuff, came out. And, you know, obviously we're in a sport that's, you know, not as restrictive, right? Yeah. Testing procedures. So what I really enjoyed about, you know, was the time and time again coming back. And that's really, you know, as you know, I was consistent, right? I was second, you know, I didn't really fall back once I reached that plateau. I was only one place to go, and I was able to climb that way. So for me, you know, looking at those type of athletes, that's really and a lot of inspiration. And it's similar to like the people that started me in bodybuilding, like Sylvester Stallone and Van Damme and, you know, film stars, right? But I remember in the 70s, you know, I was born in 73, and I remember Jenner on the Wheaties box. I actually remember that. And I remember how, you know, I remember seeing him with the gold medal and like him being this, you know, crazy athlete. And to watch the documentary and realize that, you know, his first year, 72, was his first year in the Olympics, and he finished 10th. Mm-hmm. And then he was able to climb up. And obviously he had a lot of inspirations along the way. Is that my phone beeping?
Probably.
And it was crazy because, you know, this is someone that, you know, if you looked at how he actually built up to be better, like his physique, you know, and I admired the physique. Like if you look back and watching the documentary, I think you should watch it. It's
I'm definitely.
It's pretty cool to see. You know, he actually showed in the documentary the guy that won prior to him, and he says he mouths the words, "That's it," and he knew at that point, I'm coming back to when this is going to be my destiny. And I love that. You know what I mean? It's kind of like we talk about the greats of the Jordans and, you know, obviously LeBron and these people that are just like Kobe Bryant that are just like determined, right? And that gave me a lot of inspiration. I was able to actually work with Jenner. Actually, in 2005, we actually did a like an infomercial together for a vitamin that I was involved with in Utah. And it's funny because we had some deep conversation about bodybuilding, and he knew Tom Platz well, because he used to train at Gold's Venice.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that those athletes, that was my first experience, like, of athletes mixing. Because remember, social media didn't exist, right?
And, you know, the funny part is the average person out there, when they think of Jenner, they just think, oh, he's married to a Kardashian.
Yeah.
They have no idea. He was literally the most savage athlete in the world in the 70s. He was that guy. He was the ultimate
But there was
alpha.
no social media. Yeah. There's very little. So when you get to see these documentaries on these athletes, you know, it's kind of like the Jordan thing, right? Jordan, when we watched the Last Dance documentary, you learn about all this stuff that you didn't know.
Behind the scenes that nobody knew.
Because there wasn't social media where every day right now, like LeBron's on, you know, First Take, like you're watching all these different media channels and you can know exactly what LeBron's doing, right? What he's doing off, you know, with his son and playing basketball and all the donations he does and great, you know, charity things. And represents, you know, basketball like better than anyone, right? But it's crazy because this is an athlete, you know, I mean, I think back to like the Celtics and the Lakers. We talked about that series, and we talked about the Birds and the Magic Johnsons and, you know, the faces that you just don't see on social media today, right?
No.
And that's when I talk about the transition of sports. But that, you know, giving your mind and putting it into that kind of realm gives you great motivation. And I encourage like anyone that's striving to be better. It doesn't have to be in bodybuilding or in sports in general. It's about life. You know, that's what
you can just becoming the best at what you do.
Yeah. I mean, there's everyone in their life they're a role model for people around them, whether it's your child or a family member or a best friend. Everyone is looked up to. Yeah. And that's what I learned. And that's, you know, I just always said, listen, I'm on a platform that makes it more visible. So people look and they say, well, you know, your notoriety is there, and your influence is much greater, but I'm on a platform that's way more visible because obviously with my social media presence. But it's so amazing to me that I still have more popularity today than when I was winning the Olympia 11 years ago.
Yeah.
That was my last
and
one.
You know what? I mean, and I work with a lot of the active people now, and to this day, you're still the most in-demand bodybuilder in the world. In demand, meaning the most requests for appearances. Every big expo in the world wants you. Every podcast wants you. And it's not just, part of the reason we started this podcast was there isn't a week that goes by that there's not some type of request, whether it's for a sports or financial or just motivation or just a radio station. Like, you're still one of the most in-demand people. Why do you think that is?
I think my time, like the length of a career. What do you think the length of a bodybuilding career is supposed to be? I think
most people don't even have
I think
a career.
5 years, like, is
I was
a
going
pro
to say
is
5. The vast majority of people that want to become a professional bodybuilder never do. Just like the vast majority of people that want to be in the NFL, only so many people do. And for years, only the winner of each class in nationals, the overall winner in North Americans, and the first and runner-up at the USA's turned pro. So there was way more people that never even got that career. Now, once they did, how many of them really went, 15 to 20 years? A small handful. There's a lot of people that turn pro and you never hear of them again. But what makes you think that you are still, with all these other guys out here now who are active on social media, who are still in the trenches, who are standing on the Olympia stage getting medals, and why do you think that these promoters in these companies and these expos, they still say, if I'm bringing someone in, I'm going to Jay Cutler?
Listen, I think I'm not going to say I appreciate people more than everyone else, but what you'll notice about me is I always take time for it with everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it hinders the time we have, meaning like if we're trying to go somewhere, we're scheduled to be somewhere, I never cut the lines, right? You know how many times you come up, dude, we have to go. Or we gotta hurry up. I'd never want to disappoint people, because especially people that wait. But listen, man, I was a fan of it, and I think that I still have that level where I'm still looking up at, what makes someone like a prominent person. And I still have that reality of that. My mom always said, she said, what I love about you the most is that you're still the same person as you were when you were 14, 16, 20. Like, it didn't really change. It doesn't matter all the success, because with me, I measure success like beyond, like, people look at like notoriety and success as like financial or power, mm-hmm. where I measure success as how happy you are in life and how much you can laugh and smile and be like in a position where you can kind of do what you want to do and you're happy doing it, right? There's no bad days. Like, we talk about that a lot. And I think that's where people, they feed off that energy. So when they meet me, I think their expectations are like, I wonder what Jay's like. And they walk away with the experience of like, man, he's just a normal, down-to-earth guy that mm-hmm. just loves what he does. And we go to these expos because we love it. We travel, for the USO because we love it, and in all, like, after everything's said and done, like, it's the benefit of being a role model to people and being someone that they look at as motivational. That's really what it comes down to. So when these promoters and these people that want to bring in a name, they know that, okay, well, Jay has a good reputation. I think that people want to meet him and have the experience to shake his hand and maybe share some sort of story. Mm-hmm. And everyone has a story. Everyone has a story to tell me, and that's what I love about what my job is. I wake up every day and, I get messages on Instagram today, and, even the messages we get on these podcasts, right? And they're like, telling me, this is the reason I found you, or mm-hmm. like, this is why I get motivated watching your stuff. You've heard it all. Like, it's not because you had the biggest arms, right?
Even when we go to places, people always tell stories when they're standing in line. Because a lot of times, I'll stand there and grab the phone just to help along with pictures. And while you're sitting there talking with somebody behind me will say, hey, look at this picture of Jay and this little kid. You'll look at it and be like, oh, it's a cool picture. And he's like, that was me 12 years ago. And he gave me a free picture back then. Or Jay showed up 20 minutes early, and he stayed 2 hours late, where a lot of other people won't do those things. Like I remember we went to Sweden, not last year, the year before, and we were only supposed to be there the 2 days. And we got in a day early. And I remember I walked over there and I was like, man, this thing is massive. I had no idea, how many people are going to show up. And you're like, it's going on right now. And I was like, yeah. And you're like, well, let's just go in today. I'll just go spend 4 or 5 hours there today. You didn't have to, but you're like, what am I going to do? Just sit in my room?
Yeah.
Like, or what are we going to do? Like, let's go see fans today. So we went literally 3 days in a row, and not a lot of people would do that. And I'm not like calling people out or anything, but there's a lot of people that won't take that extra step. But how many people went there only that Friday that weren't coming Saturday and Sunday that got to see Jay Cutler that wouldn't have got to see him? And now they can go back and, wow, man, he wasn't supposed to be here, and he just showed up to see the fans. And all those positive stories are going to get spoken.
Am I crazy to spend as much time?
No. I think it's there. That's what you do when you build a legit brand, and you have a brand that's larger than life. And it's because it started years ago, and the way that you act now with fans, it's not fake. It's not fabricated. This is how you acted with fans 20 years ago. And it's been the same person right along, to where somebody might have been good with fans and then they got some notoriety, and then they're not as nice to the fans, or don't give the extra effort, or blow them off, or turn stuff down. And then later on in their career, they're like, oh, I got to get back to the way I was before. But that middle part, fans remembered how you were. They remembered when you left an hour early, or showed up an hour late, or someone asked you a picture and they said no. Like, I've never heard you ever say no to anybody, outside of like when someone asked for a picture in the bathroom or something. I'm like, dude, no, we're not taking a picture.
That's
in the
the worst, bro.
It's like, yo, man, you want a picture of the urinal in the background? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, I've had that happen numerous times where people ask for pictures.
Other athletes, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember one time in particular, it was Phil Heath and I think we were in Germany, and somebody came up. He's like, yo, can I get a picture? And I looked at him. I said, yo, man, he's taking a piss. Like, what are you doing? Like, go stand outside. But some people just, they just don't care.
Hey, man, you know what? I love it that much. It's so crazy.
But you put in the effort, and people remember it. And what happens is, when you start this many years ago, and now maybe that 12-year-old kid that you gave a picture to, or a poster to, or a shirt to, and you didn't charge them, 15 years later, somebody's standing in line and they say, hey, my name's so-and-so, here's my business card. I just opened a nutrition store. I want Jay to be the first person there because, and they'll recite that story.
Yeah.
That's happened so many times. I want him to be there because he was at a bodybuilding show, and he was late, and he stayed an extra hour, and I got to see him because of that. And every other bodybuilder there was just dipped out. But they remembered you put that effort. And I always tell that with anyone I've ever worked with, effort matters.
Mm-hmm.
Effort is the most important thing to me, because you can't always guarantee the results, but you can't fabricate it if you're really putting an effort in.
Yeah.
That's just been something I've lived by.
I think for our people watching and aspiring fitness people, because I know some of you guys follow this, my reputation is I was the first to get there and the last to leave.
Always.
Many times.
Still.
To this day, like, listen, I set my hours, right? But I don't cut the line. So if they have to kick me out. But I remember at the Meet the Olympians, do you remember those?
Yeah.
Many times.
I can tell this story in 2007, when we talked about this last time, when you had the infection.
Yes. And
I remember when I said, like, I thought you could have died.
Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration. And I remember coming over to you. Everyone was gone. Ronnie was gone too. Everyone was gone. You were the last one there. And I said, Jay, we got to get you out of here. You were there for like 3 hours, and there was still 100 people in line. And you slowly turn your head to me and you're like, I'm not leaving. And I remember looking at your jaw and you're like, I'm not leaving until the last fan sees me.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you sat back down. You weren't standing up taking pictures because you couldn't stand.
Yeah.
But people sat there and you signed every last thing. And then when it was done, we went around that door in the back and you ate there. And then you had a hard time walking. We helped you walk to the car and then we drove back. But you were the only one there. And I remember when I started working with Angelica, I told her that Jay has the blueprint, follow it. And every year she was at the Olympia, she was the last person to walk out every single year.
So for the viewers, their listeners that don't, the Meet the Olympians is the night before the contest. So it's Thursday night. And it's kind of a meet and greet, which is absolutely crazy. Like, I never agreed to this whole thing, like, with the way they did it, because it's like, the Super Bowl team. It's like Tom Brady having a meet and greet the night before the
Super Bowl.
Yeah, like with fans. It's really hard to do because your focus is like trying to dial right with water depleted and carb loading, and it just doesn't make your body feel the best. And but I remember staying at those things and just, people's reaction to this day. You're right. People still come up to me and they said, yeah, I met you and you stayed. Thank goodness, because everyone else had left. And, that could change people's lives.
Of course.
And that's what makes my job exciting is, changing people's lives for a positive just by a simple conversation. I can't even imagine, but then I have to put myself down to how I was when I was a kid and being able to travel to Olympia, but I never imagined that.
Yeah.
To this day, like, I didn't have that opportunity. I lived on the East Coast, and we didn't even know where the Olympia was held. It was kind of like a thing in the magazines that popped up after 3 months it was over. So, and now we get to travel the world, and I was just thinking when you were mentioning, Germany and all these places, and I remember flying in, which is crazy. I remember bringing all the luggage. We travel with huge luggage bags of like
clothes,
merchandise,
hats,
right?
Yeah.
Because we sell our merch at the booths. And FIBA was probably the biggest sales we've ever had. Like,
it's the biggest fitness expo in the world.
Yeah, so that's in Germany. And I remember United used to only fly to Frankfurt, and then you had to take a train.
It's a nightmare.
To Cologne, right?
Yep.
So
and
I
they
remember
have no place to put your bags.
Yeah,
either.
so I remember I had 3 big roller Ogio bags. Who shout out to Ogio because they sponsored me for years. And I remember, like, I was by myself, and I'm like, how am I going to lug? You have to bring the carts, right?
Yeah.
And
you can't take them out. You can't take them out of the
train
airport.
station. Yeah, like, so I had to try to drag those bags. So I would stack the 2 on top of each other and try to hold the handles.
Hold the handles.
Thank God I was a 300-pound bodybuilder with
Yeah.
a grip like a gorilla grip, and I was pulling the bags through this train station. Then you're right. There's no place to put them, so I'm stuffed on a train with a gazillion people.
And you have to. So when you get on this high-speed train, you can have a seat, but they literally have no spots for bags. So in between the carts, or in between the 2 carts, they have that spot where you get off and on. And you have to stack the bags in there. And if you have a stop, you have to make sure they don't fall out on the ground because you have no place to put your bags. And then once you get to Cologne, depending on, there's 2 spots. They can let you off in the train station in Cologne, or they can let you off right behind FIBO, depending on which train you get on. If they let you off at the train station, you can get a taxi. But if they let you off behind FIBO, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So you just walk out, and then there's just like a sidewalk that goes right to the building. So you have to drag your shit. There's no one, unless someone's there to help you, you got to figure it out. I was thinking about FIBO. It's another story about going the extra mile. And I remember this was 2 years ago. You were booked for an hour, and then they had another athlete coming in for an hour, and then you were booked for another hour. And I remember we got done with the hour, and you were like, you mean I'm going to leave here for an hour and then I'm going to come back in another hour? And you're like, no, I'm just going to stay here for 3 hours. So we stayed there. But most athletes would have been like, I got an hour off, I'm out. And they would just leave. And you're like, well, what am I going to do? Like, where are you going to go? You're going to walk through. There's 300,000 people there.
Yeah.
You're going to try to walk through the crowd.
It would take me an hour and a half to walk out of the expo to come back in.
So you're just like, no, we got
it
this.
Made no
We're
sense.
roped in. So we stayed there for like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
But every fan, and here's another thing too, to aspiring athletes or just whatever you do. If you you don't realize that sometimes that fan that's standing in line, they might have drove 10 hours to see you. They might have took off work to be there. You know, they might not have a lot of money, expendable income to take off work to go meet someone that's their idol. And no matter how bad your day is, no matter what you have going on, that person is going to take that experience with them forever. And if you don't give them that little extra, they're going to leave and go, so-and-so's an asshole. I drove 10 hours there. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the athlete doesn't realize what this person went through. And that's why when you just treat everyone good and you treat everyone the same and you give them that little extra effort, that person's going to go home and you were their idol. And now you're like a hero to them because you gave them that little tiny bit of extra effort. And you'll do that a lot where someone will come up, and I see it every time. Someone walks up, you put your hand out first, you shake their hand. What's your name? Oh, Nate, nice to meet you. And you ask them something.
Because they're nervous as hell.
Of course.
I mean, I would be too.
Yeah, well, hey, how long you been training for? Oh, you got a show coming up. Oh, is this your sister? Is this your mom? Is this your kid? Like, you give that little bit, and it does calm someone's nerves. But people remember that experience, that Jay Cutler asked me my name. And he shook my hand. Mm-hmm. You know, he put his hand out. And, you know, there's a lot of people that won't do that extra bit. And
I think a lot of it's confidence, though, too. Like, an athlete has to have the confidence and be able to stand face-to-face with people. And,
of course,
a lot of people don't have that experience, right? Not to say from the get-go, I wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't as inviting.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because you see me at these expos and then you see me on the personal side and you're like, I'm kind of still an introvert and I like alone time and I'm very, very reserved, right? I'm not like the guy that super wants attention all the time. And I think for me, it's I had to learn how to be more appropriate and accepting the fact of who I was. And I was a figurehead in the realm of what I did. I never imagined, and it took me a while to really mature myself to that level and realize that, okay, I'm in this position for a reason. And that's today. That's what we do. So it just makes my job so easy, so fulfilling, but more importantly, it's a value to so many around the world. And, we can talk about expos till the end of time and where we've traveled to and all the different cultures, Australia and, like we mentioned, Germany and Canada, and we have our Canadian tour coming up. So shout out to our Canadian people. And people are killing me with Toronto, bro. They just want me to come so bad. And unfortunately, because of restrictions, I'm just a little worried about that. But right now our tour is planned for
October.
Yeah, October 15th, but Saskatoon, Regina, Edmonton, and Calgary. So we have that region. And sorry, guys, Toronto people, we don't have anything planned, but we got to plan something there.
Something will come up. Once we're allowed to travel again, like normally, I know there'll be endless promoters around the world or places that are going to want to bring somebody in because they haven't had anybody.
I'd love to go to Sweden in December. I don't know if that's going to happen.
The last I spoke to them, they said it's still kind of on pause.
The UAE we're not traveling to.
All the events were canceled there. We were supposed to go to Iraq, to do supplement stops. That's
Algeria
canceled.
Also.
Algeria, yep. The only other one I know for that is still scheduled, the Arnold, the Olympia, and
San Diego,
but also Tamer has a show in Brazil, Thanksgiving weekend, and that's still
Brazil. I know you want me there, so maybe. I know. Tarek just asked me this weekend because I actually went to a show this weekend. I didn't mention that. So while you were in the Denver region, they did have a muscle contest, the Sin City Showdown here in Las Vegas, and I was able to attend the night show and give some support. Some local athletes competed, and I got to see Tarek there. Tamer he's over in Brazil, so we have another event happening this coming weekend, which I'll be in Anaheim for Angie's competition. So she's going to be competing in the Southwest, it's called. Yeah. She's doing her first bikini competition in a few years, which is kind of cool. And it seems like every weekend we could go to a show.
Yeah, it was nice. It was different for me. So this last weekend I flew into Denver, and then I drove up into SS Park, which is about It took about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours, because it's windy roads and up into the mountains. And Brian Shaw had his second annual Brian Shaw Classic, and it was in this pavilion, so to speak, but it was big enough. I mean, they had about 1,000 fans in there. And I'm telling you, I have never seen a crowd so happy, excited, full of energy to see this strongman competition. Now, Brian brought in all the top guys from the World's Strongest Man, outside of the two brothers that placed from the UK, the gentleman that won it, and his brother. They weren't able to come because their sister
the World's
was getting
Strongest
married.
Man, or
Yeah, the guy who's the current World's Strongest Man. His sister was getting married that weekend, so they couldn't come. The Stolman brothers, I believe their names are. But he even had Big Z come back and compete. Saviscus, who's like one of the most decorated.
Yeah, he competed a lot of years that I was there.
He won 4 World's Strongest Man, 8 Arnolds. And this is the first time he competed in years, but
How old?
46. And he was right in that top 3, going, until I think he pulled his calf or he pulled a muscle and he had to pull out of it. But every single time a guy went up there to do some type of lift, that crowd went absolutely crazy. People would stand up, they'd start stomping on the bleachers, they'd scream at the top of your lungs. And I'm looking around and I'm like, holy crap, these guys are going to move more weight than they normally would, because how are you going to let that crowd down? So it was cool to just go see an event that, because I'm close to Brian and I help him with his appearances, and he's a trifecta athlete. And just knowing that a year and a half ago, he hit me up one day and said, hey, I'm going to do a Shaw Classic because, Brian, does well in the industry, and not everybody else is in a position.
Is he a pioneer of strongman?
He's one of the most respect. I always tell him he's the Jay Cutler of strongman, and you and him are very similar in a lot of ways, how you treat people, how your work ethic and the whole nine. But he said, I'm going to put this event on in Colorado last year. And he said, I'm going to put the money up. I'm going to do this event and I'm going to compete in it. And whatever place I take, I'm giving all the money to the other guys because I want them to be able to make a living like I do and like I have. So this whole event was him giving back. So Friday night was so successful with their streams. Saturday morning, he walked out and addressed the crowd and said, it was so successful, I'm taking the prize money from $50,000 to $100,000. Personally, he doubled it. He wasn't doing this to make money. He said, I want these other guys to be able to make a living. So that's just, it's cool to see something like this.
So how much does a first place guy get?
I think the first place got $25,000.
Okay.
And so they spread the money out, and yeah, it was just a cool event because strongman is it's not like any other kind of
so popular though.
It's popular, but these guys legit cheer each other on.
Yeah.
Even though you're trying to win, you'll see some guy in there let's say they're going to do a lift, and if this guy does X amount, he takes first place. The guy that's in second is out there cheering him on. Hey, I hope you beat me. And I've never seen that type of camaraderie.
I think, witnessing strongman at the Arnold where they have it at the night show.
Yeah.
I feel that the crowd really gets behind them too. And they don't know anything about strongman, but when you watch a guy do a feat of strength,
a 300-pound dumbbell with
it's
one
just
arm.
Crazy, man. And Shaw is just a he's a beast, right?
Yeah, he's
Bill Kazmaier was the man growing up when I was, he would be probably the most famous strongman that I can remember.
So the head judge for the Shaw Classic was Magnus for Magnus.
Yeah.
And he was there with Kazmaier. They were battling. He won 4 World's Strongest Mans as well. And to look at him and think this was the strongest guy in the world, and then you look at Brian, who's over 400 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's not fat by any means. He's just a massive human being.
Yeah, former basketball player, which is crazy.
I remember one time he told me he got up to 470. I'm just sitting here thinking God, I remember when I was 280 and I could barely breathe. I couldn't imagine being that big.
Is he 6'7" or 6'9"? 6'8", yeah.
But it was just, it's cool to go to events where that, this event is getting put on for the right reasons.
It's really, it's very generous, and
you and him were going to do an event
seminar,
together this last year, but the Arnold got canceled, where it was going to be the 4 times World's Strongest Man, the 4-time Mr. Olympia, do a seminar together.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think, maybe next year, if it gets bigger, I think it would be a cool event for you to go to, because even though it's a strongman event, every strongman still knows who Mr. Olympia is.
Yeah, the demographics.
It's still the same. It's still in the same family,
Mm-hmm.
and the strongmen pay attention to everything else. And I think that crowd would have if you would have been there, they would have received you just like one of the strongmen.
You ever see the picture of me between Shaw and all those guys?
Shaw and Saviscus. He
it was
posted
overseas. Yeah,
he posted.
Dude, I look like the size of this bottle, like in between these monsters.
It was your birthday, I think, last year, and Brian posted a picture up. And he said, "Happy birthday, Jay," and it's a picture of you between him and Adrutus. And you
no,
look
there
like
was another guy.
and there was
too,
another guy behind you, and you looked like a little child standing.
I was still pretty big then. I was probably 260 or something.
No, I think you were still competing.
No, it was when I was retired, but I was still big. I mean, it was a couple years after. It was like 2014 or 15 or something at FIBO. Man, it's a lot of success in all these different facets of.
But it was like I said, it was cool to just go to something a little different than I normally do. And I went to the World's Strongest Man with Brian earlier in the year. That was my first time ever seeing the World's Strongest Man in person, and then going to this event, and it's like, wow, this is a pretty cool thing, But we'll get you out there.
I can't wait. What questions you got for me?
All right, so we got.
And guys, we're thanking everyone for the great questions, because this is going to transition into some of the questions today.
Okay, the first.
Give me an easy one first to start. Give me the easiest question.
Will Jay ever grow a full beard?
I think I answered this.
You did, but you got to answer it on here now.
I've done that a little bit.
I think you should do it once just to do it. Like, don't shave for a month.
When I don't shave for like a week on Instagram, they start, "Hey man, you should grow a beard and you look badass," But
why don't you get all tatted up?
I'm not trying to look badass
Shave
at
your
this
head,
point. Yeah, it's just for me. A beard. Just number one, I think I'd be more white in my beard, because of my age.
You always pick on people that have beards too.
Yeah, well,
shitty.
I think you need to keep it trimmed or take care of it so it doesn't look so ragged.
Who is it? Isn't it like Flex Lewis? You always pick on him. You're like,
well, he has a red beard.
He's like, he's got a beard and it's red.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would wear that, but I like I think Jason Poston has a good beard. Like, he shapes it good. But sometimes your beard gets a little crazy. But I don't think I would probably say I would never grow a beard. I've done like some scruff, but I think that's as far as it's gonna go.
I think there should be some type of challenge, and you should have to grow a beard.
Yeah.
So this one. Give us your funniest travel moment. Like something that really funny. I can say one up front that we
why
experienced.
don't you tell me the story?
And so this last time we went to Germany to FIBO, we were trying to find food, and
which is a chore.
Which is not easy, especially on Sunday night.
We don't speak German.
We don't speak German. So it's on Sunday night, and Uber works over there. So I order the Uber, and I said, I'm finding this restaurant that's supposed to be open. So the guy picks us up, and you can look on Uber the path they're supposed to be taking, and this guy was going, I don't know where the hell he was taking us, but it was not following. Like, all I know is like 10 minutes later, we're trying to talk to him, and he doesn't know English. We're like behind some building in an alley somewhere, and he drops us off. Like, and we had to like climb up over some like little wall thing and walk down to get to this restaurant. And the whole way we're like, yo, what the hell's wrong with this guy? He just like left us in the middle of nowhere. So we walk for a couple minutes and we get in the restaurant and it's closed. So we said to the people, "Oh, we just closed. We're not taking anyone else on." I'm like, "Where can we get food?" And they're like, "Well, you got to go to the other side of the bridge."
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not walking that far. So I get back on Uber and it says, "Oh, a car's coming in 5 minutes." So a car pulls up, and I think Izzo was with us. You guys get in the back seat, and I get in the front seat, and I look over, and it's the same damn guy that just dumped us off.
That was and I think it was a language thing, and it was late at night. I think it was like 10. We just finished working out.
Yeah,
I think we were working at one of these.
We're training
gyms.
One of the gyms, and I remember looking at him. I was like, "Yo, man, you just dumped us over here. You're gonna get us lost again." And the guy just looking at me, he has no idea what I'm saying.
He didn't say anything back, and he ended up bringing us to that. It was a pretty good restaurant we went to, actually. It served some chicken, and I think
it was another one that kind of they directed us to some little spot. It was down down some like the old brick roads.
Yeah,
and
it was
stuff,
like a
and
little
it was some little door and
alleyways and stuff.
It was great food.
Yeah,
but I never remembered that. I just always remembered sitting in that car and looking at the Uber driver like, what the hell? That's the same guy.
But Sasha met us there. Remember, Sasha takes care of us at the gym over there in Germany. So shout out to Sasha. Listen, I'm going to tell a story about how, we went to the Middle East. We went to Dubai, and, we always had great, service there. And we end up staying at this hotel. And I remember, we were talking to, I think Nick was the promoter that year of the
Dubai Muscle Show.
And, the hotel kind of sponsored the rooms, right?
Uh-huh.
And we ended up, in this room, and he's like, hey, they want to put you in this
presidential.
Suite. Yeah, I don't know what it was called. It was a Marriott or something.
Yeah.
And we got in this room, man, and it was so big.
Yeah.
That we actually asked to downgrade.
To go back to our old room. And our old room was a 3-bedroom, condo.
Yes, so this thing must have been 5,000 feet. It had a huge living room. It had a full kitchen, the cabinets, it was like bedroom after bedroom. And I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me, and we're like, do we really need this? Because you were staying on a whole separate wing, and we were trying to get stuff, and we would kind of collaborate, and each day we had activities we needed to get done, and that's when I think we were touring with the military, and we were also there for meet and greets and doing radio, and we were trying to find time to train, and the time change is so crazy there that I was training at 3 a.m. I mean, I couldn't sleep for shit there. So, but that was the only time that I actually asked to downgrade our accommodations because it was just so outrageous. I think we asked what it would cost to live there a month.
Some guy lived there for a long time and then it opened up. I remember when you walk through that front door, they had an office that you could have a legit office of 10 staff people in it. And they had that table because it was my birthday.
Yeah, but they had huge. It was like
they had this little cake that said "Happy Birthday, Matt." And we were sitting there. That table had to be 20 feet long by 8 feet wide. You could fit 50 people on it. And I'm like, what the hell do we need this for?
Yeah, that's when I think Angie sent me flowers there. Remember the roses showed up? And
it was
who the hell?
I think it was flowers? Before we moved to the bigger room.
Yeah.
But I remember I went in the kitchen. And there was nothing in the kitchen. Yeah. And it was one of those things where you had to push on it and then the door would open and then you'd see a cabinet or you would see something. But when you walk down the hall, that hallway had to have been 30 yards long. Yeah. And there was just bedroom after bed. There was probably 20 bedrooms. I'm like, what the hell would anyone need this for?
Yeah, we didn't need all that space. So that's probably one of the crazier ones that, I'm sure there's a million stories that people would love to hear about, but we actually downgrade our accommodations at some of these events.
Nobody else does that. So this one here says, why do pre-workouts have warnings like do not use for more than 8 weeks? It's my first time using pre-workouts I've noticed on Prevail and Amplify, which I love, by the way. I was just curious.
I think your body gets used to everything, and I think anything that has, stims or caffeine or you should give your body a break. So I always encourage people that buy pre-workouts, even though there's 25 or 30 servings, they think that they need to use that for 25 days in a row or, 25 workouts. There should be workouts that you don't have to use a pre-workout. I'm more prone to use a pump pre-workout, meaning with no stimulants, no caffeine, because I'm looking for the nitrous oxide type pump. But I think your body needs to cycle on and off. It's just like the days when people used to use creatine only.
Yeah.
And you had to cycle on and off it because your body does get used to it. It's just like, using any kind of medications. I mean, if you use Advil or whatever else, you're not supposed, your body does get used to it if you use it on a consistent basis. So with any supplement other than, I think, protein, which you can use on a continuous basis, anything that has, things that are going to give you the edge for pre-workouts or whatever else, I think it's always great to take a break. And I encourage, even though I have a supplement company, I still encourage people to cycle on and off, especially the pre-workouts and the caffeine. Caffeine is one of those things that I'm not, to this day, I'm very careful. I know you drink a lot of coffee and indirectly, sodas and everything else have a lot of caffeine. So try to track your caffeine and see what, in a day, what you use in total, milligrams or grams of caffeine. And I guarantee a lot of people would be a little higher than what they should be. It's not great on your body.
What was the lowest point of your career?
Man, I would probably say 2007 Olympia. 2007 Olympia. I mean, I would, people would expect like the 99 Olympia where I rolled into that show hoping to get calls with Ronnie Coleman and Lev Rowan and Sean Ray. And I finished 15 out of 16. But actually the lowest point probably was winning 07, and having the infection and then having the world, question if the win was legit or not. So I had to, basically travel around for that whole year with, here's the champ, and then the whispers of like, should he have won?
Yeah.
It was pretty devastating to me actually, because, I won 06 after so many battles second. I was the new king. And then in 07 to come back to defend the title and win it and have it be questionable, it was very hurtful for me. Not to say like that I truly believed I deserved to win, and some people would knock on that. It's just a matter of opinion, but I felt like I was off, but I still felt that, Victor wasn't at his all-time best, meaning like it was still that, he needed to be a little bit sharper. He might have been a little sharper in certain areas, but I think there was certain areas I was sharper. And obviously my width was an advantage back then. So for me, it's easy to look back, and I mean, I'm looking at Sandow's behind me, that sit here, and everyone tells a story. But I think that point, I traveled to Australia after I was overcoming the infection, and then, having to roll into 2008. And then, of course, losing in 2008, that was pretty devastating also. Because, once you get that taste of the championship, it's really hard to let it go. So definitely losing to Dexter was another low point. But I would say winning in 07 was worse than losing it in 08. It was almost like a sense of relief in 08 because of the struggles I had. And then, of course, going to the highest point in 2009 was the highest ever, even over the first one I ever won.
That was the next question. What's the highest point of your career?
Yeah, probably 09, coming back to win it, being the first one in history ever to do that. Tearing the cover and, being that guy again, right? 2006 was pretty amazing, too. I remember waking up every day and, like, it took weeks to sink in saying, shoot, I'm Mr. Olympia. Like, you never imagine when you start training that you become the best at what you do. I mean, you look at and admire like the Lee Haneys and the Dorian Yateses and Ronnie Coleman, who then you end up battling with, but to be in the history books. And it's even more amazing to me at my age today to be recognized as one of the history makers of our business. There's been 15 or 16, I don't know how many, I think
16
Mr. Olympias. I was the 11th. And it's just amazing to me still to this day to be in that history books, to be one of the elite in 50-something years, It's crazy.
And you're one of the most successful bodybuilders, businessmen. What is your secret to financial success in bodybuilding?
Fear of being broke.
That's pretty simple.
I always fear. I don't care anything I ever did, whether I feared losing on stages. I fear because, listen, I wasn't always wealthy or successful with finances. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, what keeps me driven is like, okay, I know what it feels like to be on that end. Mm-hmm. I know that hard work pays dividends, right? So for me, I never gave up that ambition, and no matter what, like, I never get comfortable. I never get satisfied. I continue to budget, but I always never shoot for anything that's out of my striking distance. Mm-hmm. So, like, I will take chances because in business you always take some sort of chance, but I always have a B, C, or D plan when I have a plan that is in front of me, meaning like, I've kind of established myself to have my hands in a little bit of everything. And I'm no expert in don't get it wrong. Like, I have great relationships, and I have people that are trustworthy, and I have people that are knowledgeable that help me and guide me. But I also take the time to learn about the things that interest me. And I always go for the things that I'm passionate about. So if, like, I'm passionate about bodybuilding and in merchandising and, like you talk about, going to speaking at seminars, like there's just knowledge that you can't teach with textbook, right? It's all through experience. And I think for me is like, I never shoot too high, but, I always, have that mindset of like, I don't want to fail.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me driven to this day, and it keeps me focused on the prize. And I've kind of reserved myself a lot from diving into too many things. Deals come across every day.
Every day.
And you're going to have winners, you're going to have losers. I've been very successful in real estate, but I've also lost. I've done investments that I've been very successful, but I also lost. I mean, just like with bodybuilding, I've done great and I've lost, right?
Yeah.
I haven't won everything. I'm not one that's just started in it from the beginning.
You lose 100% of the chances you don't take.
Yeah. So I think they have a little balls at the same time, not giving a damn what people think sometimes, and just staying true to who you are. And, my dad from day one raised me to work really hard. I learned the value of $1 very early. I live a very great lifestyle, but I'm still prepared for, what could be the worst, right? Yeah. And I never take things for granted. I think that's what keeps
you always give me shit about that and say, you're being cheap. I was like,
yeah, I think
I know what it's like to be at the absolute bottom, and I'll never go back
of
there.
course, yeah. And I mean, I say that because, if, you go to stores to save money, or, certain gas stations, or, we talk about, saving money on, trips, and, not booking certain class because we use points or status or whatever else to that's one thing, you travel with me, and I don't always fly first class because if it's absolutely outrageous, I won't pay it, no matter how much money is. And you say, well, you need to spend money because your business, it's a business expense. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I'd rather take that extra $400 and take a client to dinner, or upgrade our computers, or build a better podcast studio, or whatever else, instead of blowing it on a 3-hour flight that I'm going to sit and watch the same bullshit Wi-Fi TV thing.
You know what I was thinking of? Another funny story. So we were going to Dubai. It wasn't that trip. It was a different one. And I remember we looked up the flights, and you were flying out of LA and I was flying. I had to go through Toronto. We met in Dubai. And I remember looking the flights up, and I was like, yo, man, that flight on Emirates from LA nonstop is like $15,000. And my ticket was like $12,000. I remember you going, we're flying coach. And I remember you got on the plane and you said somebody up front was like, hey, is that Jay Cutler back there? And you're sitting way in the back of the plane. But I remember you just messaging me the whole way. You're like, I'm never fucking doing this again. Why did you put me on this seat? You're like blaming me. You did this to me. And I was like, yo, man, I'm on a crappy flight too.
So I'm going to tell the story, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. So I got on this Emirates flight leaving to come home. Okay, it's 16 hours direct from Dubai to LAX. And then I have to get over here, right? And of course, it's like a 3-hour layover because there's no flights when you land, to plan it right. So I get on the plane. I'm like one of the last ones to load on, right? And I'm in economy. I don't even know if it's upgraded economy, whatever, plus or whatever. Plane is packed. And there's this greeter at the door. And he's like, hey, and it's like one of those things where he didn't want to at the minute say, oh my God, Jay Cutler. I could tell he knew who I was. So I went to my seat and I sat down. And all of a sudden the plane's wrapping up and they're making the announcements and whatever. Everyone's buckling their seatbelts and all the kids and all the people are sitting. And this guy comes over and he goes, oh my God, Jay Cutler. And you're sitting in coach. Why? And I'm like, this mother. And I'm like, I look around and the whole plane stops because, the guy has to blare it out. Jay Cutler, you're sitting in coach. It's exact words. And I'm like, I put my head down. I'm like, oh my God. And I text you and I'm like, this is your fault.
You did this to me.
I blamed you. Because I have a habit of doing that. Whoever's not with me,
it's their
I
fault.
blame someone else. And I didn't think I was being, dude, I saved, I don't know how much I saved.
Thousands. It was like $1,200
No,
versus $15,000.
Yes,
It was
yes. So
like
the
you saved like $13,000.
so the ticket was yes, because we had a landed price.
Yeah.
And oh man, so I was like,
And you know what the funniest part about that was? So when I flew home from there, I didn't fly Air Canada on the way there. I flew from Dubai to Germany to Chicago, and I was upgraded because I used points to upgrade. So you were in economy, and I flew business back because I purposely took a route that I knew I could get upgraded on. I'm like, I'm not flying this Air Canada because it was the same thing on the way there. The only flight that would get me to land within an hour of you was an Air Canada flight.
yeah.
So I had to go from where I was at in Wisconsin to Chicago to Toronto to Dubai. And on Air Canada, you have no status. You can upgrade on Lufthansa. So I couldn't even, like, premium economy was like $5,000. And I'm like, I'm not paying $4,000 extra. No way. So I had to fly, and I mean, the back, and I was just crammed for 14 hours
Yeah,
or whatever
needless
it was.
to say, I did sleep, I think, 11 out of the 16 hours, and, it all was fine.
That would have been a great text message to say, you did this to me.
Yeah.
This is
I
your fault.
probably have it in my phone somewhere. So, yes.
And also, so what's the shirt you have on today?
This is the new Legend shirt. This is on Jay Cutler Shop, so make sure you guys check it out. I have some new merch on there, and you can see my image in this.
So we're going to do with this. We'll take this, and if you're interested in this shirt, it'll be the top link on the YouTube.
Yeah.
And
different colors. It comes in, all different
I've never seen
colors.
that one. It's got that old picture of you pointing off to the side.
Yeah, so I'm coming out with a lot of new styles, so make sure you guys check out Jay Cutler Shop, and my memorabilia site also, so you can check it out.
And it's a wrap.